Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council for September 27th, 2016. We have a quorum present. We will begin today's policy session by turning to members of the Phoenix City Council and see if they have any information or follow-up requests they'd like to provide to our city management or the public at large. Would any member of this council like to provide information or follow-up requests? Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind everyone that the District 1 breakfast is this Friday morning, 7:30 a.m. at the Radisson Phoenix North. That's at Metro Center. And Ray Dovalina will be our guest speaker. So all those many questions that you keep emailing me about streets, this is your opportunity to get it right from the source. Also, the gang kickoff at Metro Center, 10 a.m. to noon. Everyone's invited to meet the police, fire, and neighborhood services. We'll have a shred-a-thon there, police recruiters, crime prevention tips, and more. It's always a fun activity, and I want to encourage everyone to come. That's all I have for this time.
Councilwoman Stark.
Just building on the GAIN event, I hope everyone can attend that on October the 1st. And of course, GAIN Day is always the third Saturday in October, and we have a lot of events scheduled in the district for that. As well as tonight is Phoenix Teens Program Night. They're having a virtual party. And the one in District 3 is at Sunny Slope Youth Center tonight at 5. Also, we've had several businesses opening in the district, most notably along 32nd Street. So credit to Councilman Gates, who led the charge to get him there. Black Rock Bouldering Gym. It's a nice, neat little facility. I hope people can go visit that. It's 32nd and Shea, and upcoming will be right in the garden. And our next coffee chat will be 8 o'clock at on October the 27th at Half Moon Sports Grill at Greenway and 3rd Street.
Fabulous, thank you. Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you. I'll go next. As mentioned, the Phoenix Teen launch is tonight, and so I'm looking forward to be with the teens and my colleagues in their different districts to do a virtual launch tonight and having fun. We also have community conversations on guns, violence, and police Thursday, September 29th at First Church United Church of Christ on 2nd Street in Moleta. Phoenix Kids Get Fit event is Saturday, October 1st at the Longview Rec Center. We will be having Family Wellness Fair produced by the City of Phoenix Latino Institute, so it's all free. And then, of course, they mentioned the GAIN event. Hispanic Women's Corporation's Professional and Leadership Institute will be here next week, Thursday and Friday. Looking forward to being with many professional women. We have a FAFSA kickoff October 3rd from noon to 5 p.m. at various Phoenix Union High School District schools. We have an FAA discussion Tuesday, October 4th at Encanto Clubhouse. We also, on October 5th, Phoenix Suns game highlighting campaign to end domestic violence. And then October 8th, Saturday, we have the Native American Connections Annual Parade. As you can see, we're very active in October. And then October 3rd, we will be launching, along with Valley Big Brothers and Big Sisters, mentors, gathering male mentors in order to mentor young men. And then various games event throughout the district, October 8th, October 15th, and October 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Waring.
Thank you. Tomorrow night, and again, if you're watching this tape, tomorrow night is Wednesday night, September 28th. We are doing an event with our Water Services Director, Catherine Sorensen. Obviously, water's been in the news in the city of Phoenix, so we're happy to have her out. I think it's very timely. It'll be at 6 p.m. at the Paradise Valley Community Center. The Paradise Valley Community Center is just north of the northwest corner of 40th Street and Bell. It is north of Paradise Valley High School, which is there on the corner. It is on the west side of the street, and we look forward to seeing you and hearing what the Water Services Director has to say. Thank you very much.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. We got quite a few people in the audience. This past month, the mayor put together a proclamation and is basically dealing with Hispanic Heritage Month. And this gives the public at least an idea of all, our city is, 40% Hispanic. And it gives the public a perspective of what's really happening in our community, who the real workers are out there, those individuals that have committed to our community, and those individuals that have put their life and blood into some of these businesses. I was honored to do the presentation to Los Taquitos and a lady by the name of Vicky Ochoa. Her and her family started Los Taquitos quite a few years ago. They've opened up several locations. They've even got one at the airport. And these are the individuals looking for the American dream. They work hard every day. She comes in there, she makes her own food, which I was surprised at. It's right down the street from me. Their food is amazing. It's off of Elliott Road. And she comes in there, and I've asked her, I said, what's the recipe? She goes, well, I don't know. I do it by taste, just like my mom used to do it. But she's just a lot younger. She's like 40 years old. So, but this is the example that a lot of us look at when we look at these small business owners, and we look at how much work that they put into this, how much drive they've put into it, how much effort that they've put into making their lives successful, and how hard they work on a daily basis. She gets there really early in the morning and leaves late at night, as someone would when they take care of their business and their employees, and her employees love her. So congratulations to Vicky Ochoa and Los Taquitos. Thursday, we're doing a Tomasos Day proclamation that the mayor is going to be at. Actually, the mayor is going to be doing the proclamation. It's going to be September the 29th at 12 p.m. If you're by Tomasos on 32nd Street and Camelback, I would suggest you stop by, come by. I think they'll have some food around there as well. And then some of the upcoming things, we've heard people talk about the GAIN events. We have a ton of events, more than I'm going to be able to list, and especially in a short time frame. But the events are going to be on October 15. If you can contact my office at 602-262-7491, we'll get you in touch with people in your neighborhood, and we'd highly encourage you to come out to these events. Additionally, we have the 4th Annual Children's Business Fair, and that's going to be November 5th at Arcadia Neighborhood Park. And I would strongly encourage people that live in that area of Arcadia to come out and check out this event. It's a great thing for children. It teaches kids how to run and operate their own business. It gives them an exposure that they normally don't always get. And then finally, Mayor, I'd like to get an update if I could. The City of Phoenix looked into this issue some time ago. Don't know what happened with it, but I'd like to get some data on it. The concern I've got is these constant fines that are being put on the public, whether or not they're even constitutional. And it's an issue primarily for people in the lower class, people that cannot afford it, that barely make it. And the reason I bring this up, I had an individual that I've known through school, high school, always struggled, always had a hard time. And he finally found his way out of it, but he contacted me, probably 2 years ago, talking about how the fines were piling up on him and how he didn't feel like he could ever recover. But what he did is he got on his bicycle, started going to work. It was just an individual who's always struggled. But the concern I've got is that when we pile these fines on individuals, primarily those individuals at the lower, income range of our community, they never recover. Then we take away their driver's license, which we did with this individual. And once their driver's license is gone, how do they get to work? And so I also believe that there's a constitutionality issue on this, Ed, is that sooner or later it becomes above reasonable, and I believe it's an Eighth Amendment issue, Brad. So it's an unreasonable fine that gets put on there, and as these fines pile on, these individuals never are ever able to get out of this thing, and so then they end up letting it go. What I'd like to get from staff is what that range of fines are on individuals, how far they've piled up on some of these individuals. How much was the original fine, if we could look at things, whether it's water. And the other part of water, I met with some of the labor groups. One of the concerns that they had is that their line individuals can actually negotiate some of these issues with those clients, and then sometimes they're finding themselves being overridden by senior staff when they feel that they've put together a reasonable expectation from that citizen, and then they're overridden from staff, and then they get another fine piled on, and then they can't recover. And then we don't even recover. I mean, we have a lot of monies outstanding, but it becomes at a point where it's unrecoverable because it's so high, and people end up becoming, they see the situation as futile. So I'd like to see what our policy is on that when it comes to water, traffic fines in particular, because I think we have the ability to take away people's driver's licenses, and what we can do to start working with these individuals to get them back into jobs, because if they can't drive because they've got a traffic fine, it doesn't have to be a speeding ticket or anything else like that where they're unsafe. It could be parking fines. It could be anything else that's out there. Now we've created a situation where those individuals can't produce. They can't produce for their families, and they're going to be stuck in this cycle that never gets them out of it, and it's government created. I mean, granted, they have personal responsibility, but then we end up piling on. So I'd like to, if I could, Ed, get us to put together some sort of report. Let me look at the numbers on that. And I'd like to see what we're doing with water, if we can work with some of the water staff in particular. You know, some people in this economy are doing well, and there are a lot of people in this economy that aren't doing well. And those individuals that aren't doing well, we ought to find a way to work with those people, especially when it comes down to, and I know water does a great job always trying to work with people on a payment plan, but from what I've heard from some of the labor guys, or one of the individuals, is that they're being overridden, and that override sometimes is something reasonable. So I think instead of saying no, we ought to find out ways to make that work. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. I think we've made some major policy changes in arena, so maybe the chief presiding judge could brief the councilman on policy changes that have been made in Phoenix Municipal Court as relates to fine policy, particularly for those of lesser means. And then, Councilman, if you have any particular policy suggestions, at least as it relates to public safety in the court system, that would be through the Public Safety Subcommittee. All right, any other council members have any? Vice Mayor, please.
We actually have breaking news from just this morning on fines and fees. Thanks to Karen Peters and Judge Taylor, we hit this today. 8,500 people have participated in our Municipal Compliance Assistance Program, which is a great program that helps people who have fees piling up get on payment plans and get their driver's license back. So that's 8,500 people who have a little bit of good news to share. And that program got great recognition from a task force that Justice Bales put together that said what Phoenix was doing was a model. So we have a lot more to do, and I look forward to working it with my colleagues on that. But not only did we get state recognition, our court system was invited to a Department of Justice program. We were one of only two court systems in the entire country that got recognition for what we're doing. So we always can do better, but it's worth celebrating some of the successes that we have so far. So thank you to Karen and Judge Taylor and the folks who have been working very hard on that program. May we have more successes to come. I have a couple District 8 announcements. We are excited to welcome 2 new members to the District 8 team. Natalia Brown is going to be serving with us through AmeriCorps Vista program, and we are excited to have her. And then longtime District 8 leader Armida Lopez has joined the District 8 team, and welcome her as well. We, speaking of longtime records in District 8, one project that has united everyone who has served the District 8 City Council seat is South Phoenix Village, and today we had a great groundbreaking with our partner FSL Real Estate Services. Our city manager and much of our leadership were there, as well as several retirees who worked on the program. It's really a community success story. We had great community leaders who have been working with us now for decades on continued improvement. And it's a special neighborhood. Many of our city staff came out of that neighborhood. So great roots and a great future. Congratulations to Neighborhood Services and all those involved on that project. We are also on Friday celebrating the 40th anniversary of the University of Arizona Cancer Center, which is continued great record of service. In honor of my Jewish heritage, I'm also looking forward to celebrating the Jewish high holiday season, which is coming up, and thankful to folks at the city who have tried to avoid scheduling meetings during those important holidays for the Jewish community. And then I have another great milestone, which I think was a first for us. We did a job fair for returning citizens, folks who have been in the criminal justice system, that was very successful. It's part of the My Brother's Keeper initiative, which Councilwoman Pastor and I have the pleasure of chairing, working to make sure we have good outcomes for all people, including our young men in the community. We have a lot of great people who have made a mistake at one point in their life and deserve a good job and an ability to get back on their feet and take care of their families. unemployment is a higher level among returning citizens, and so we wanted to step up and try to address that. And we had amazing support from city staff as well as nonprofits. Greater Phoenix Urban League, Friendly House, and Goodwill stepped up along with our Human Services Department and our My Brother's Keeper coordinator, Martin Whitfield. We had a day that included skills, resume writing, interviews, how to dress appropriately, and then brought in 14 employers who said, we want good people and we're willing to understand that sometimes people make a mistake. We had 156 individuals participate, 25 got jobs on the spot, and many more at subsequent interviews after the event, and we're still compiling final numbers, but it was wonderful to see how happy the people were as they left. We had one guy dancing out the door who had gotten a job offer after struggling for quite a while to find a job. So I want to thank some of the key team members who were part of that and present them with a certificate, and would invite the mayor and colleagues, if they're interested in joining these exceptional individuals who helped put together this great event, for a quick picture. Martin Whitfield, My Brother's Keeper coordinator, Briselda Rodriguez with Human Services, Sunita Starr with Human Services, Tamara Spenley with Human Services, Elizabeth Mariscal with Friendly House, and Dominic Bram from the Greater Phoenix Urban League. Thank you all for your leadership in this great event.
All right, thank you very much for your service. We'll take a picture with the Vice Mayor. And I think she's going to present a Friend of District 8 award to the team. All right, congratulations. Thanks again for your great service. Any other council members with follow-up information and/or requests? Councilman Valenzuela?
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome the District 5 new Chief of Staff, my longtime friend, Tony Mottola, who comes by way most recently from Valley Metro, but is no stranger to City Hall, as he's worked for 3 other elected officials, 2 other council members, and a mayor. And as I mentioned, he's just a longtime friend, incredibly smart, and we're all very excited to have Tony. I get a lot of compliments. I'm still getting a lot of compliments. I think he's on week 3 of trying to, our efforts of convincing Tony to come be our Chief of Staff. So welcome, Tony. Next Friday, we have an exciting event for the City of Phoenix with your help, Mayor. In your efforts, the Rise of the Rest is coming to Phoenix. Much of the entrepreneurial activity, certainly that is highlighted throughout the country, is around 3 different areas: Silicon Valley, Austin, Boston. And Steve Case, the co-founder of AOL, has done this for the last few years. He actually has a bus tour visiting some of the startup hubs, the next tech innovation hubs that are doing some great things throughout the country. And this year, next Friday, that tour will end right here in Phoenix. And that speaks volumes of what's been happening with our education institutions, our universities, public and private, our high school, Phoenix Union High School District, all the great things that they're doing to support tech and innovation, and of course the city, our municipal government, as well as nationally ranked co-working spaces and incubators and entrepreneurs that are doing some great things here in the Phoenix region. And so we're excited to be we're excited for the opportunity. It's going to really highlight what Phoenix has to offer, and to be the finale of that tour is a big feather in the cap for all of our entrepreneurs. So really looking forward to that. 19 North, the big grand opening for 19 North is on October 7th. Also, next Friday, 19 North is in line with the light rail extension, Northwest Extension on 19th Avenue between Bethany Home Road and Dunlap. It connects hundreds of businesses, 7 schools, places of worship, hospitals, grocery stores, and a very diverse population there. So I want to thank Shannon McBride and Open Door Fellowship on 19th Avenue for spearheading this effort. You're going to see 19 North signs on 19th Avenue. Valley Metro's been a great partner, so we're excited about that. And finally, many people realize that Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona is actually based in Phoenix District 5, and on October 19th, Blue Cross Blue Shield will have their grand opening for their new Vision Care Center. It's right on at their location near 23rd Avenue north of Northern. They will be providing affordable, comprehensive eye care. No insurance is required. They're going to have some really great discounts, and just another opportunity to serve that immediate area, but also obviously the entire valley. So we're looking forward to that event as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councilman Valenzuela. Any other members of the council? Council follow-up information and/or requests? All right, let's continue then with on our.
Mayor,
I apologize.
Sorry.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Mayor, this Wednesday, finally, we're going to have meetings about the 202 going through the Levine area. That's going to be at Betty Fairfax High School. That's right off of 59th Avenue and Baseline, just south of Baseline. We're inviting everybody to come out, look at the designs, give your input on the freeway and what they would like to see on the southwest side of the freeway. Also, ADOT's holding another meeting on October 6th. That's Thursday, October 6th at Flowers School, Elementary School, which is right off of 67th Avenue and Van Buren. And we just invite everyone from the Estrella Mountain area to come on down and talk about what they'd like to see in their communities and with this new freeway coming in, and people are excited. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other members of the council? I want to miss anybody? All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on with the agenda for today. Next item on the agenda is a call for executive session. Vice Mayor, is there a call for executive session?
Mayor, in accordance with a properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 38-431.02.a, meet in executive session on Wednesday, October 19th at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington, Phoenix, Arizona, and on Tuesday, October 25th at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington in Phoenix.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Mr. City Manager, do you have any reports or budget updates? I know we have a budget item on today's agenda, but other information for this council or the public?
No, Mayor, the item today will be our budget report.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go out of order for today's agenda and now move on to item number 3. Item number 3 is a proposal by 2 members of a council regarding city employee expression of political speech. Because it is a formal action by the city council, we have to go into a formal meeting, so I'll call the city clerk, ask the city clerk to please call the roll of the city council.
Councilman DeCiccio. Councilman Nowakowski. Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Valenzuela.
Here.
Councilman Waring. Councilwoman Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gallego.
Here.
Mayor Stanton.
Here. City clerk, would you please now read the 24-hour paragraph for the proposed item?
The titles of the following ordinance number on the agenda was available to the public at least 24 hours prior to this council meeting and therefore may be read by title or agenda item only. Ordinance G6212. Ordinance G6212 is an ordinance amending Phoenix City Code, Chapter 12, Elections, Article 3, Division 1, Section 12-217, related to soliciting or contributing to campaign funds, membership in political organization.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're done all the important prep work, and we can now hear this item and potentially vote by this city council. This item concerns a proposal by Councilman Valenzuela and Councilwoman Pastor regarding interpretation of our city charter as it relates to city employee expression of political speech. So I will hand it over to our city management so they could explain to the best of their ability what the proposal is, the impact of that proposal, any thoughts you might have on it. I'll turn to members of the council, see if there is a motion, a second. I have a few cards from the public to discuss this important item. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you noted, Mayor, on August the 30th, you set today's agenda, an item requested by council members Valenzuela and Pastor, to consider changes to the ordinance governing employee political activity in city candidate elections. Just to review for those who are watching, the Phoenix City Charter, Chapter 25, Section 11, places restrictions on employees' political activity in city elections. Phoenix City Code, Section 12-217, adopted by the council, provides further definition on political activity by city employees. In some cases, the city code is repetitive of the charter. It's this code provision today that's proposed by some council members, to be revised. We don't bring this forward as a staff recommendation, but changes to this ordinance are purely within the council's authority. So based on the direction given by the council in today's meeting, the administrative regulations and personnel rules that promulgate the charter and the code would be adjusted to reflect any changes made today in the city code. So now Brad Holm, our city attorney, will briefly go through the code changes that were suggested in the August 30 memo, and we also include a couple of additions for clarity.
Thank you, Ed. Mayor, members of the council. To begin with, let's talk a little bit about Section 12-217 that we're here to talk about changing today. There are 4 proposed changes to Section 12-217 that would involve the definition of private expression of political opinions. And there are additional changes then that are proposed to eliminate code provisions that essentially just duplicate charter provisions. In order to understand those, let's start with what employees currently may do under the charter and code. First, they may vote in any city election. Second, they may privately express opinions about candidates for city office. Third, they may sign initiative and referendum petitions. And finally, they may participate in initiative and referendum campaigns during non-work hours. So if the changes were adopted, let's talk about what employees may do with the ordinance changes that are proposed. Again, these ordinance changes go to the expression of personal political opinions. First, employees would be permitted to post private opinions about candidates on personal or non-governmental social media accounts. Second, they could display political signs for city candidate elections on non-governmental property. Third, they would be permitted to express personal opinions about candidates to others in a public context, but not in their official capacity or while on duty. And finally, they would be permitted to sign nominating and recall petitions. Those are changes compared to the existing code provision. Next, let's discuss what employees may not do even if the ordinance is amended. And the reason I bring this up is because it deals with the second category of changes proposed by the council persons. Those changes would essentially eliminate duplicative provisions in the code, provisions that duplicate what's already in the charter. So the charter continues to remain in place, and these are things that employees may not do even if the ordinance is amended. First, they may not solicit or donate money to a city candidate's campaign. Second, they may not participate in the management or affairs of any city candidate's campaign. Third, they may not join an organization formed for the principal purpose of furthering a specific candidate's campaign. And finally, they may not express political opinions about city candidates while on duty, in uniform, on city property, or using city resources. So, in accordance with the City Council and Mayor's memos of August 30th, the proposed ordinance amendment is presented for council action. As the city attorney, I suggest 2 clarifications. First, the proposed changes should not apply to the limited number of city staff that conduct or give advice concerning city elections. Otherwise, these staff members would be conflicted in performing their employment duties, which include acting as neutral referees and arbiters of election matters. And second, I would propose changes that the proposed changes should include language that expressly prohibits employees from initiating or circulating nominating or recall petitions. That's our presentation on the legal issues, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. My suggestion then is I'll turn to Councilman Valenzuela, see if he has a motion, see if there is a second, so we have something on the table. But I did want to give our city manager the opportunity to kind of now give his own opinion about the merits of it. I know it's a little awkward because I know you don't like the idea, and I appreciate that and respect that very much. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of explain to this council and public your thoughts and feelings on it. I'll first turn to Councilman Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make an motion with the following language, which is the proposed language for Section 12-217, soliciting or contributing to a campaign funds membership and political action, political activity. A, it shall be unlawful for any candidate for nomination or election to any office of the city to receive, either directly or indirectly, from any employee of the city, any money or other thing of value, whatever, for the purposes of defraying the expenses of or furthering such candidate's nomination for or election to any city office. B, it shall be unlawful for any employee of the city, with the exception of elected city officials, to take part in the political management or affairs of any candidate's campaign for nomination or election to any city office, other than to vote or privately express opinions, except for city staff to conduct or give advice concerning city elections. Privately expressing an opinion includes, but is not limited to, off-duty activities such as signing, but not initiating or circulating, nominating, or recall petitions, posting on personal or non-governmental social media accounts, displaying a sign on non-governmental property, and communicating with another person or group of people when the employee does not do so in an in an official capacity. Notwithstanding the foregoing, it shall be unlawful for any city employee to engage in political activities while on city time, in uniform, on city property, or using city resources. Sorry, that last comment was C, so let me just restate that. Item C, notwithstanding the foregoing, it shall be unlawful for any city employee to engage in political activities while on city time, in uniform, on city property, or using city resources.
Okay, and does that include effective date issues?
No.
What's that? Okay, so that is the stated motion, which I think is not intended to change in any regard what Brad has presented in summary form up on the, I think we wanted to read the entire proposed ordinance because we're acting as a formal city council at this time to make sure we get it on the record to make it official.
Yes, Mayor, that's how I understood it.
Okay, so the motion then was not intended to change. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Councilwoman Pastor, who was the other signatory of the original memorandum, was the second on the motion. I think what I'll do now is turn to members of the public that would like to provide comment on this proposal, and then I'll turn to members of the council for any questions or comments that they may have in advance of a vote of this city council. I have 3 cards on this item. Let's see, the first card is Steve Berline. Steve Berline, you wish to provide testimony on this item. Then Deborah Novak-Scott, followed by Chris DeRose. President Berline, good to see you.
Mayor, council, staff, Steve Berline, President of the United Phoenix Firefighters Association. also a native of this great city. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Today, Phoenix City Code, Chapter 12, Article 3, Division 1, Section 12-217 does exactly that. It's unconstitutional and it is unjust. On behalf of the Phoenix firefighters and paramedics whose First Amendment rights have been abridged, and myself, a native of this great city, I'd like to thank Mayor Stanton for acknowledging the need to amend this ordinance, and the council members, Pastor and Valenzuela, for taking the appropriate steps to protect the First Amendment rights for all City of Phoenix employees. The proposed amendment, which you will be voting on, is about protecting the right of free speech under the First Amendment, and I know that everyone here is in full support of protecting our constitutional freedoms. We do respectfully oppose the city attorney's recommendation, the addition in section 12-217B, line 8, where it reads, "but not initiating or circulating." Now, the state of Arizona employees do not have this restriction. In fact, ARS Statute 41-752, which happens to be entitled Protections of Civil or Political Liberties, clearly states any employee may circulate candidate petitions. Again, City of Phoenix employees should not have any of their First Amendment rights abridged just because they are employed by the City of Phoenix. Mayor and council, there are few things more sacred than our First Amendment right to free speech. Your vote to protect our rights under the First Amendment is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve Berline, for your comments. Deborah Novak-Scott, good to see you.
Deborah Novak-Scott, Vice President, AFSCME Local 2960, representing Unit 3 employees. Just to back up what Steve said, our forefathers created the U.S. Constitution, and when they drafted the First Amendment, it was the freedom of political speech. The idea was to allow citizens the right to participate in the democracy. This includes political campaigning. It's considered protected speech under the First Amendment. However, currently, off-duty city employees cannot exercise their free speech. They can't support any city council candidates. They can't put a sign on the lawn at their house. They can't even support a candidate on Facebook on their off-duty hours. We believe that's a violation of our First Amendment rights. The U.S. Supreme Court recently reaffirmed these rights in the Heffernan versus City of Patterson case, and another case, Garcetti versus Sabalos. First Amendment rights are protected for off-duty jobs or off-duty time for government employees. We urge the council to allow the city employees to participate in city council elections and allow us our First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Novak-Scott. The third speaker I have is Mr. Chris DeRose. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mayor, Council. Thank you for your time. I wanted to make two brief observations, one on the merits of this proposal and another on its timing. For the first, as President Berline pointed out, the First Amendment does protect our free expression, and it's important. But there is also a sacrosanct corollary right in that First Amendment that protects us from engaging in political speech with which we disagree. And one of the questions I would ask the council to ask themselves when considering this proposal is, to the extent that this proposal would allow a city employee to canvass neighborhoods, knock on doors, to put up signs, to actively participate in a council member's campaign, if a council member were to ask a city employee, hey, can you put up some signs for me? Can you show up at 9 a.m. to do a walk for me? Would a city employee, would you, if you were a city employee, feel comfortable telling that council member no? And if you wouldn't feel comfortable telling that council member no, I submit to you that you should vote no on this proposal, because it will infringe on the First Amendment right to refrain from engaging in speech with which we disagree. My grandfather, who recently passed away, worked his entire life in the forestry department in the city of Chicago. And for him, he was very expressive about it. His continued employment, his promotions at work were conditioned on his participation in a political party and political activity and getting out there and working for his aldermen. I don't know why we would want to import Chicago-style politics into Phoenix and potentially put these city employees in a bad position where they are asked to become the campaign workers for city council members. Second is to the timing. I know the effective date is up in the air. It's something you guys can decide. If the city council is persuaded that this is a beneficial provision, what I would urge is that the council wait until the special election in District 3 has concluded. It will probably conclude in the March runoff. If we are changing the rules in the middle of an election, I would have to submit to you that this provision, which has existed in the city and protected city workers for as long as anyone can remember, I would submit to everyone that we know exactly why the council is doing this if we're doing this in the middle of an election. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. DeRose. I also have Marshall Pimentel in favor but not wishing to speak. Is anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on item number 3, the proposal as it relates to city employee expression of political speech? My excellent staff has informed me that I had misspoken earlier. Our city management is not opposing the item. I think he is just not taking a position on the issue. So I'm going to put you in an awkward spot, and I appreciate the distinction. It was my mistake. Councilman Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one quick question. The line that does say, but not initiating or circulating nominating petitions for the city attorney, and for clarification, is that currently in the charter?
Mayor, Councilman Valenzuela, it's not expressly in the charter in so many words, but what the charter says in no uncertain terms, and I'm referring now to Charter Chapter 25, Section 11, Paragraph 2, it says, no person holding a position with the city, except elected officials, shall take any part in political management, affairs, or campaigns in any election for City of Phoenix elective office further than to vote and privately express opinions. So our interpretation of that provision is that initiating or circulating petitions is fundamentally contrary to the language that employees cannot participate in the management, affairs, or campaigns of a candidate for city office.
Okay, I just want to explain a couple of reasons. Actually, Mayor, what I want to do is, so we already had the motion and the second. Let me defer to my colleagues on some comments, and I would like to come back for some.
That's perfectly fine. Okay, now I'll turn members of the council. Does any council members have any questions regarding the proposal or any comments they would like in advance of a motion? Council, please come forward. Good to see you. We'll hear from the public first, and then hear from our council members. Abe, good to see you, and please introduce yourself for the record.
Mayor and council and staff, a question I would have only is, I support my union brothers and sisters on this position, but at the same time, I thought I heard it say, and if our council can give us some advice, what is it if a nonprofit has a 501c4? Would a city employee be able to be part of that nonprofit?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. If the question is, could the city, as a member of a nonprofit, could a city employee as a member of a nonprofit act contrary to the charter, the answer is no, they can't. They're still bound by the charter while acting as a city employee, even if they also happen to be fortuitously a member of some other organization.
You can't do things, if you're working with a 501c4 that may be active in a campaign, you can't do things as a city employee that you couldn't do directly for that candidate. The rules don't be eliminated simply because you're working through a different entity.
Exactly, Mayor.
And the only reason I was asking that is because the way it was written, it says you cannot join, but those of us that are already representatives for nonprofits, would that exclude us?
Mayor, members of the council, no, what the language said is that you can't, to quote it expressly, you can't join an organization formed for the principal purpose of furthering a specific candidate's campaign. You can join a 501c3 or 4 that happens to support some other cause, but then decides to participate by making a contribution in an election. That's not a violation. What's a violation is joining an organization formed for the principal purpose of furthering a specific candidate's campaign.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. All right, anyone else here from the public wishing to speak on item number Three? Okay, now we'll turn it over to members of the council. Councilman Waring.
I'm sorry, when does this go into effect?
Councilman Waring, if it's passed as an ordinance today, it would go into effect 30 calendar days after the mayor signs the ordinance.
So, as Mr. DeRose said, right before the election.
It would go 30 days from, if he signs it today or tomorrow, yes, approximately the end of October, it would go into
Election
effect.
is the first week in November, so like I said, right before the election.
Correct.
Did any of you guys think to tell any of the other candidates about this?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, I haven't communicated with other candidates, no.
Okay, so did you think this was information they might like to know? Because they're running against an incumbent, a former city employee who had hundreds of people work for her. They might have wanted to know that like a week before the election, there would suddenly be this 14,000 odd pool of volunteers that could work on their opponent's campaign, put up yard signs and so forth. A lot of people think, you know, city is kind of run by insider baseball and so forth. I was certainly told that when I ran. I've never seen anything that tells me different. I was told repeatedly I couldn't win, it was an uphill battle, et cetera, et cetera. But here I sit. I've got a quirky personality that the more you tell me I can't do something, it actually goaded me into the race, to be blunt. So people should have talked a little less, and I probably wouldn't be here bothering you with these questions right now. But this is going to feed right into that narrative, doing this the way this is being done right in the middle of an election. So, but that's okay. I actually agree with Commander Berline, probably to his surprise. I think disagree respectfully with some of the things Mr. DeRose said about the importance of free speech versus his grandfather's experience in Chicago. You know, we're going to err on the side of openness, I think, in this vote. That's my guess anyway. I will say this, though. Go ahead and take out, I'll make a friendly amendment, take out the things Mr. Berline didn't like. I would also add, and I'm not sure if we can do it today, you can clarify, that go ahead, have city employees donate.
Testing.
I'd rather
Testing.
Okay.
Apologize for that. Councilman, please
All right,
continue.
sorry. I'm saying I'm sorry, it wasn't me. But regardless, you know, go ahead. I'd rather be able to look at a finance report and see kind of who's for me and who's against me. And if anybody at home is watching thinking I'm trying to feather my own bed or whatever that phrase is, I think it's unlikely that there will be hundreds of city employees flocking to circulate my petitions. That's my guess. So this is a vote contrary to personal interest, to be sure. And I understand that. I think there's a lot of politics involved in this. But that doesn't make right is right any different. I was surprised. I did not realize when I first ran that city employees couldn't put yard signs in their yards. That's something I feel very strongly about. I'm a big yard sign person. I think they're worth their weight in gold. And it bothers me that the city has a policy that says city employees can't put a sign that they either purchased or received or whatever that belongs to them in their own yard. I don't think that's the business that we should be in. I completely understand that. We don't have to get that many. In fact, we have to get embarrassingly few signatures to get on the ballot in a city council race, and really even a mayor's race. So go ahead, initiate the petitions. I think some people will wind up doing it at work. I don't know who's going to police that. Maybe Mr. Zerker can explain why this has been city policy for so many years. I had talked about this with his predecessor. I think it opens a lot of Pandora's box, but that's okay. It's the way it is. So I'm willing to go for a more, I'm not even sure if the word liberal or conservative version of this, but I'll go for a stronger version of this that lets the unions, and please notice it was, except for the candidate who I had to tell about this because he had no idea, because nobody thought to tell him, which I think is fundamentally unfair. So just so you know that, I think any reasonable person looking at this is like, wow, so the incumbent gets briefings to his or her heart's content, but the outsiders don't even know this is happening. How would they? They're out trying to run a campaign. But everybody else was a union person. So that should tell you something, but that's okay. I'll take the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune all day long. I do have a few pointed questions, though. You've answered when this is going to go into effect. You didn't tell the candidates. You know, I think that's kind of inexcusable. That's hard for me to stomach. But let's talk about a couple of the particulars. So Mayor Stanton misspoke, I guess, when he said the city manager is against it, but I never got the vibe that you're really in favor of it. I certainly talked to your predecessor about this, Ed. This came up 4 or 5 years ago. He's long gone, so I won't pretend to speak for him, but I know he had strongly held feelings about this. So let's just take a couple hypotheticals. You're assuring us, it sounds like, that everybody working on the elections and the city attorney, and Eddie, city attorney-like people who work on elections, are not going to be involved in this. So that answers one of my questions. Because hypothetically that could be offered as, say, the city attorney was overheard saying intemperate things about removing a council person. That would put everybody in an awkward spot, particularly said council person, because I don't really want to work with somebody. I wouldn't hire an attorney who is working against me. So I'm glad that won't come up. Police. Let's hypothetically say a police commander writes something, sort of a nastygram about elections, using intemperate language that probably wouldn't be acceptable if it was one employee to another or police to a citizen. That would certainly, but I'm in a different boat. I signed up for this. That's the way it goes. So let's say something like that happens, hypothetically. And it's a commander rank type person. Now, I got to work with that person. So what are we going to do?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, so there's a couple things here. One is the prohibition against city employees speaking or the lifting of that. So a police commander is a city employee. The police commander is not involved in advising on city elections. So these changes would free that person to privately express opinions as the change is done. But there's a second piece of it, particularly for people in management, that has to do with professionalism in dealing with the public, elected officials, or other city employees. And so we'd have to examine the nature of that criticism in light of the professionalism piece of it, not in terms of the charter prohibition of it, is how I would answer that. I'd have to see what it is, and it's clearly excluded under the charter prohibition for city employees' involvement in electoral speech, but it is potentially part of a professionalism aspect of city employee behavioral expectations.
So it's not just necessarily, Mayor, Ed, it's not necessarily just going to be okay to say whatever you want, particularly at a command position.
That's correct.
Or a city manager position or something of that nature.
That's correct.
So let's move down the food chain.
It's basically, it also depends on the level. So certainly from the city manager level, there's a high expectation of professionalism that changes as you go outward into the organization.
So moving down in rank, we had an incident maybe 2 years ago. A member of the union, but also a city employee, started chipping away at our professionalism. So I pointed out we'd done a slight bit of research. It'd take about 10 seconds to do it. They had called another council member, not myself, amazingly, a rather unfortunate body part. I guess we'll just put it that way. When confronted with it, there was sort of a hemming and hawing, but yes, that was them. Yes, they spoke that way. So, we are opening up that as well. At what point does that become, I'm not asking because I can't take it, I want to be able to fight back. So, and we'll get to that in a second. I don't want to be fighting with my hands tied behind my back. So if somebody calls us nasty names on Facebook, I guess in a political context, but I assume if they were doing that to other city employees or you, that wouldn't be tolerated. So how are you going to handle that situation? We had talked about that at the time. I don't know that I ever saw a policy addressing how employees talk to each other. I'm still not sure we have one.
So trying to figure out a hypothetical here without the actual words in front of me. This allows city employees to express opinions about city candidates and city elected officials on their private time in their private way as described, as defined here, which is social media. So I guess unless it rises to some level that's criminal, which I can't imagine what that would be, they can do that. And the fact of the matter is, yes, we don't allow city employees to do that to other city employees. I think that as public elected officials, there's a different
I understand, that's perfectly fine.
aspect to that.
So that's my next question. So you and I talked about this today, and new vistas were opened for me. So I have been furious on numerous occasions with what's been said by people, actually not really you guys, but people sitting in front of me who I think have misled us and so forth. I have always found myself hamstrung. Mr. DeCicio's experience when dealing with the Chief Garcia issue a couple years ago, where I believe that got referred to the county attorney about what was said and what city council people can said. So I have always deferred to simply contacting you. Here's what was said, do with it what you're gonna do. Frankly, that has led to, I think, some sanction, because this has come up, whether it was we had a policy or not. Certainly, I have been on the receiving end of Facebooking and so forth before that we maybe suspected might have happened on company time, et cetera, and I've always brought those to you. I don't like doing it that way, but I thought the city charter precluded me from really even criticizing city employees. I'll bring up one specific example that's near and dear to all of our hearts, the aviation director and the interactions with the FAA. You know, I think I think it's been firmly established, given the report that we paid to have, that we did not get full factual information from the airport. I took a lot of heat from constituents who didn't feel like I did enough, because I think, I can't even remember if it was suspensions and kind of demotions and so forth. I would have liked to spout off about that. The Roosevelt Row issue. I took heat because people were like, well, you suspended people for 3 days and they still got paid. I believe you told me that was because of federal law. And now I'm answering those questions, but that's not my responsibility. I would have loved to have said at the time, oh no, you should have canned them, or oh no, you should have suspended them for longer. It certainly should have been to make it hurt. Are you telling me, based on our conversation earlier today, that I can do that? Because if somebody's gonna be firing some shots at me, I wanna be able to defend myself. I feel very strongly about that. And I can usually make a pretty good argument. So what's gonna happen in those kinds of scenarios in the future?
Yeah, so we did talk about that earlier, and you and council members do have the ability to criticize city employees. So I'm sorry if that's the impression you were given, that you were not able to.
That was definitely the impression I was given on my first day in office.
The charter is pretty specific about council relationship with city employees going through the city manager, and it has to do with directing for people to be hired or fired or removed. So it's really about council members not being able to say directly to an employee, I want to get rid of you, or I want to hire you, or those sorts of things. But to criticize the performance of a city employee is not forbidden in the charter.
What about asking for longer suspensions, or broadly calling for terminations?
I think it
should
depends.
say
I think it depends on the
firings, not
words you
executions,
use.
but-
It depends on the words you use.
Okay. Could you just write out what I can say in the future? Because that is a little bit, well, I mean, you're laughing, but honestly, it's true. He got referred to the county attorney. So it's not really a laughing matter from my perspective. It did have a chilling effect. Somebody somewhere thought it was important enough to go to the county attorney. I don't even know who that somebody was, but it's probably egged on by the very people who are telling us there should be free speech. Apparently, it's a one-way street. It's only for the city employees and not for us. I just want to have an equal playing field. That's all I'm asking for.
And I didn't mean to laugh at that. The concept of writing out for council members what to say was interesting.
I don't want to get in trouble, so there we are.
I think the key point is, though, as it relates to speech by elected officials, nothing changes from yesterday, today, or after the effective date of the proposed ordinance, as potentially ambiguous it may be as it relates to elected official speech and calling for the termination of city employees, which is banned under our charter. That doesn't change as a result of this proposal. It's an important issue. We can have a discussion, but it is not affected by anything we may or may not do here today.
I understand that. It sounds like they can say anything they want, and I'm still, it sounds like, I'm not convinced I can respond on any kind of equal playing field. I'm still going to have to watch what I say. Given your answer to my previous question, it sounds like I could be called any name of the books, and if I turn around and do that, it's a little dicey how that's going to go for me.
Let me try to jump in here.
Somebody has some clarity, I'd love to have it. 'cause I'm not
Let
getting
me
it
try
here.
to clarity, and that is, what we're doing here today doesn't change the city charter at all. The charter limits some political activity by our city employees. For example, the issue brought up about financial contributions to candidates is something directly addressed in our city charter. what we're doing here today says, as it relates to areas in which we're interpreting the charter, where there's not clear language in the charter, the proposal essentially tries to interpret our charter broadly to give benefit of the doubt to our city employees so that they can get involved with political speech. Where the charter is clear as it relates to limitations on elected officials directing the city manager on personnel issues, particularly terminations, that's something in the charter. We're not changing that today, just like we're not changing the specific charter provisions as it relates to city employee. Now, some may argue that our charter has some constitutional problems. We can't deal with that here today. This is interpreting our city charter and interpreting in a way that broadens city employee political activity and speech in areas where the charter is not clear. In areas where the charter is clear, there's no change. And the charter provides specific language limiting our ability to direct a city manager to terminate city employees. That doesn't change here today. The city charter has certain limitations on employee political activity, particularly as it relates to donations to campaigns. That doesn't change here today. This is interpretation of the city charter. And you or somebody else may suggest that the charter, even as it relates to our limitations on our speech giving, as it relates to termination of city employees, is unconstitutional and bring a lawsuit, but that's not on the agenda here today.
Can I?
Of course.
Thank you. So that was going to be my next point. So I think I already proposed a motion to strip out what Chief Berline didn't like. And also, I understand we can't do it today, but we could do it tomorrow. We could have a special meeting tomorrow, correct, Brad, based on our conversation earlier, to go ahead and let employees donate and frankly do the other things the mayor talked about. I am happy to open up this can of worms completely.
That would be a charter amendment, and that we could not vote on a charter amendment.
But we can put it on the ballot tomorrow, right? We could have a meeting tomorrow and have a vote to put it on the next available ballot. Isn't that what we talked about earlier, Brad?
You could.
We can't do it, but we could let citizens decide.
You could comply with the notice requirements, which require at least 24 hours notice before considering that kind of an issue.
Yeah, but we could do that. I would argue that we should. Why would we potentially have a charter that's out of compliance with the Constitution? That seems to be the prevailing opinion up here, although we haven't voted yet. So I would also like my free speech rights back. And frankly, if we're going to go down this road, I'll segue to Mr. DeRosa's point about the city of Chicago and the way things were done there. I grew up in Illinois. I have my own experiences with how Illinois is run. So is there anything in this to prevent a city council person, let's take a hypothetical. Ed, someday you won't be here. I wish you no ill will, but I mean, you will not be city manager in perpetuity. So, I think they're, based on the way the city has been run, usually we've hired an insider to move up. So let's just say there's a deputy city manager over some department, and a council person goes to him and goes, you know what? Someday you might want to be city manager. You don't even have to say that. Maybe it's just implied. But I need you to go put up 50-yard signs for me, and I need you to get a whole bunch of signatures, or I guess sign petitions, or whatever is going to be allowed by this. Is there anything to prevent that, as he suggested? Because there will be an implication there. If you don't do this thing, what's the future? So is there anything in there to prevent any of that? Just so people know at home what we're talking about.
So, Mayor, Councilman Waring, that's a good question. The charter, remember, continues to be unaffected by the proposed amendment. The charter provision in question says that city employees cannot be involved in the management, affairs, or campaigns of candidates for city office. And so that kind of direct solicitation would effectively inject the city manager in question into the management affairs or campaigning for a city candidate. It's one thing to simply, as a citizen, sign a petition. It's another thing to go to a city employee and essentially try and buttonhole them to start working for you, because that's then involvement in the management affairs or campaigning, and that is prohibited by the city
I would say, as someone who's run his share of campaigns, I do not look at someone who takes 5-yard signs or 10 or 50 as necessarily involved in the management of my campaign. That would mean I would have an awful lot of managers in my campaign. So I guess, are we defining campaign management somewhere? Is that being a treasurer of a campaign? You're going to list these things? This is a little willy-nilly. So Where is that written down, that that's the rub?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, the charter specifically uses the term "the affairs of a campaign," and the affairs of a campaign can be further defined or modified by AR, I suppose. Not modified, but can be further defined by AR. But here's the key: the key is that when somebody solicits a City of Phoenix employee to start being involved in a campaign activity that includes some kind of more widespread activity than the personal expression of an opinion, that would be in violation both of the charter and even of the amended city code provision. So it's
I would argue that's clear as mud. If I'm defending myself from that charge, I don't know, that sounds pretty vague, but as long as you're sure, I guess. So I would say for the charter, and then I'll stop and let other people talk. You know, if we want to be Chicago, I'm okay with that. It's honest. You pay to play. That's the implication. Growing up, I watched it on the news every night. I don't think that's necessarily a great way to go. I think we probably had the city manager form of government for a reason, probably because a lot of our founding citizens or citizens involved in that activity didn't want to be like Chicago. It was probably the opposite of that. This is moving in the other direction. However, Chief Berline is right. Free speech. So I'll be supportive. I'm supportive of more than that is up there in this proposal, up on that board in this proposal. But there are things that I don't know that people have completely thought about. Maybe they think it's overstated. Maybe they think it won't happen to them. It'll only happen to me. Well, maybe. But Ed, you know some of my stories. And it's awkward. It makes it hard to do the job. It really undermines confidence. And I'm okay with that too, as long as I'm able to fight back. You're assuring me you are. I'll expect the verbiage that I can use next time I want somebody suspended longer or feel that a city person is doing a terrible job, or I can just speculate about their performance, like when we don't find out how $70,000 worth of checks wound up in a dumpster. I can just rip a whole department. As long as I can do that, I'm good to go. But thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager, you have a response to Councilman Waring?
The governing language in the charter is neither the council, so you as a body, or any of you as individuals, shall direct or request the appointment of any person or removal of any person from office by me or any subordinates, or take any part in the appointment or removal of officers and employees in the city. So it's very specific what is laid out in the charter, which does not mean that you can't criticize.
I think, Raj, I'll make sure it's clear that I would not be supportive of putting to a vote of the public whether or not city employees could get involved more in politics or political free speech. We're operating today within the limitations of our charter. This is people's First Amendment constitutional rights that we're talking about, and as a general policy, as Americans, we don't put to a vote whether or not we grant people their constitutional rights. They have those constitutional rights. It's really the issue of what restriction we're going to put on. Again, the issue about whether the legality of our charter, the constitutionality of our charter as it relates to this area is something about maybe determined by a court someday. Today, we're just interpreting our existing charter in a way that would expand, broaden people's ability to be involved in political speech. That's what's being proposed here today. Councilman Waring, please. Councilwoman Stark, please. Then we'll go back to Councilman Waring.
Thank you. First, I'm flattered you think that thousands of employees are going to put up my yard signs.
Possibly
Thank
overstated.
you so much, Councilman Waring. And I assure you, if you came and asked me as planning director to support you, I probably would say, no, I don't want to do that. And I'd still be real comfortable that I probably still have my job. But having said that, we do get packets as candidates from the clerk's office, so all the candidates should have got the reports, and they have the ability to contact the city to talk about it. So there is some notice to the other candidates. I get those too as a candidate. But having said that, if everyone's uncomfortable, I'm fine waiting until after November. I don't have a problem with that. I have a deep respect for the Hatch Act. But I think, as being a former city employee, we should have a right to have freedom of speech when we're not in City Hall, when we're on our own personal time. It's just a right we should have, like any other American. But if making it after the November election helps, or even the March, I'm fine.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Valenzuela, did you have a suggestion?
I do, Mayor. I always appreciate listening to what my colleagues have to say, and I don't always agree with what some of my colleagues have to say, but, you know, there's some great points made nonetheless. So I do want to make an amendment to my motion. I do want to make some comments. So a couple of things. I do want to make an amendment that the start date for this would be on November 9th, which is the day after the election. And I would also, and I agree with Councilman Waring on this part, I'd also like to strike the line, but not initiating or circulating. I agree with Councilman Waring. I agree with several others who've spoken up on that particular line. So that would be part of my amendment, those 2 points. And I know that, let's see if the Councilwoman Pastor agrees as the second.
Second.
You're okay with that? I can make my comments?
Councilman, please.
We have motion and a second. I appreciate it, Mayor. This is about one's First Amendment rights. This isn't about continuing to restrict someone's First Amendment rights because they are city residents who happen to be city employees who may say mean things about any one of us who is on the dais. I think it's ridiculous that we would consider continuing to restrict someone's First Amendment rights because we don't like what they have to say about the job that we are doing as elected officials. This is the United States of America. We're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about free speech. And we shouldn't limit free speech because someone doesn't like any one of us or doesn't approve of our job as an elected official. I think the wrong person is being protected here. We all have rights, certainly. We all have rights. We chose to run for office. We chose to be candidates. And frankly, people can say things about you when you're a public figure and you're a candidate and you're an elected official. That comes with the territory. I think we all agree to that. But to tell someone who lives in the city of Phoenix, who happens to be a city employee, that they do not have the same rights as their neighbor because they chose to be a public servant, they chose to be a city employee, I think it's uncalled for. And so that said, this is about one's rights. This is about our First Amendment rights. It's about our Constitution. It's about doing the right thing. Not only is it about doing the right thing, but frankly, a byproduct of doing the right thing here is it makes us a more inclusive employer as well. There are lots of cities that are of about the similar size of Phoenix that also have a council-manager form of government that don't have these infringements on their constitutional rights. We want to be competitive. You know, the private sector out there today is competing for talent. They realize that by having the best talent, business will come. And we need to run the city the same way. We have to continue to compete for talent. And we have great talent here at the city of Phoenix. But we want to be able to say that, you know, we're not asking you to check your First Amendment rights at the door in order to be a public servant and join this city as an employee. So obviously I'm passionate about it. I'm supportive of it. I'm glad that we were able to make the amendments for the start date to clarify that. Great point, Councilwoman Stark. And I agree. I think we're going a little above and beyond by adding that line, but not initiating or circulating those words. So having that out of the language is a positive thing as well. And if the conversation, if someone on this, as we have this conversation and we want to actually talk about, doing more, then we should have that conversation. We shouldn't be afraid of having that conversation. But this is what we can take care of today, and so I want to take care of this today.
All right, I know that this may be a change to the City of Phoenix, but if voted affirmatively by this council here today, this would actually put us only at par with Maricopa County and their employees. It would put us at par with state of Arizona employees and their policies. And in fact, in both Maricopa County and the state of Arizona, political donations are allowed by their employees. That would not be allowed under this proposal. So instead of creating sort of what I would describe as a cartoonish perception of what may happen by comparing it to Chicago, instead we can do an apples-to-apples comparison to Maricopa County, and is there corruption at Maricopa County or the state of Arizona, and the employees there, and say, should our City of Phoenix employees be close to par, not at par, but close to par with the level of First Amendment rights that employees at the county or the state have? I certainly think that as we interpret our charter, we should interpret the charter in a way that allows for greater First Amendment activities by First Amendment protected activities by our city employees. Any benefit of the doubt should be going to protection of freedom of expression, not the opposite. And I think this proposal by Councilman Valenzuela and Councilman Pastor is smart in that regard. Let's put our employees more on par with county employees and state employees, where you haven't seen the parade of horribles as suggested by some. Councilman Waring, please.
Thank you. So please remember, there was a motion made, and I made my comments, and I guess based on those comments, my motion, the encompassing nature of this got broader, not more restrictive. So I'm not sure that the comments, I guess directed to me by Councilman Valenzuela. I'm not saying they shouldn't criticize. I want to be able to criticize back. You're assuring me that I can. That was not what I was told when I first got to the city. I can assure you. Now, that was your predecessors, not the two of you. So there was that. As far as the donating issue, it sounds like it's okay to limit free speech some places, the city charter, but not in others. I'm not sure why we're not painting with a broader brush. I might be interested in what Chief Berline has to say about that, because he seemed like he had pretty strongly held views. But I'm okay with the donating part, recognizing that none of those donations are going to come to me. I'm not that naive. So this is not, again, self-interest. But I'm not sure why tomorrow. I appreciate Councilman Valenzuela's thoughts, so I'm sure he'll be voting with me should we get something on an agenda, if not tomorrow, then in short order, to address the issues in the city charter. I don't know why we wouldn't, given how strongly we all feel about free speech, because that was articulated by several members up here. If this is a free speech issue, and it's not related to the pending election or future mayoral elections or anything else, then I'm surprised, because I've been on the council for a while, but I haven't been on nearly as long as some of the folks up here, and nobody's thought about this, apparently, during extremely lengthy, decades-long tenure in some cases. So it's good that we're addressing this now, but don't blame me if you're a city employee and you feel like your rights have been infringed. That wasn't my idea. That was in place long before I got here, and now that it's come up, I'm arguing we should do away with all of the restrictions. So, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, those of you out in the audience. But I will say this, it was kind of implied like maybe I'd had some nefarious hand in restricting your speech, and I'm not that guy. Look to others, but not me. So now that this is up before us, I'm happy to say, let's go for the full Megillah and try to get more participation for city employees, since that's what everybody wants.
I thank you very much, Councilman Waring. It should be absolutely clear that Mr. Zerker, our current city manager, is not bound by any false representations made by the past city manager. Mr. DeCiccio, Councilman.
Exactly.
Some questions I've got here. And this would be more to Brad, given the previous testimony on this, dealing with the initiating or circulating of nominating or recall petitions. I don't know, a plain reading of that not the ordinance, but the charter, seems to think that that's contrary to the charter.
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, if I understood your comment, the way I read the charter, chapter 25, section 11, paragraph 2, it says that a person who holds a position with the city may not, shall not, it says, take any part in political management, affairs, or campaigns. Our view as the city attorney's office is that the management, affairs, or campaigns of a city candidate would include that language of initiating or circulating. So what's prohibited is anything that approaches the affairs, campaigns, or management of a campaign, and that would include initiating and circulating.
And let me walk us back into why that would be that way. And I just want to let my colleagues understand this part. I get the free speech, and I'll give a comment on that part too. But in order to do a campaign, in order to do a recall, in order to set up and initiate petitions to be done, what is the first thing that has to be done with the city clerk's office? You have to set up a campaign, a committee, correct? I have to hear yes or no on that.
And I believe
Yes.
that's correct, but
Yes.
we have the city
We have
clerk.
the
as
expert here,
you have to
Mr.
do.
Meyer.
So once you do that, you automatically become a campaign. And this is,
Chris, that was a yes?
yes,
Yes.
yes. So let's say the city council were to pass this, and then I think it's pretty clear in plain reading of it, it's contrary to the charter. And if it's contrary to the charter, then this has to go to the vote of the public, correct?
To amend the charter, Councilman DeCiccio, you are correct. The
That's what
voters
we're doing.
would have to do it. But here's the key. We're not amending the charter. We're stripping out of the code duplicative provisions. We suggested, this is our recommended language, initiating or circulating, is our recommended language to avoid the city employee thinking that he or she can now initiate or circulate because he or she has the opportunity to sign a petition, either to nominate or to recall. So signing is one thing, that's the expression
Right.
of your personal
But this
political
is
opinion.
initiating and circulating, which
Initiating
is
and
part of a campaign because you
Exactly.
established a campaign committee.
Exactly. It's a political activity that's prohibited by the charter, in our view of the charter.
And
the charter
I'm not
language
trying
is
to
up
be doing anything other than, I just heard about it for the first time just a few minutes ago. I've got issues with that part of it. I mean, of all people up here, in particular, I should have probably the biggest issues with this, but it's also a conflict that you get into when it comes to First Amendment speech. And there's always that conflict whether, this is not in my self-interest to pass this. I'm just letting you know, it is not in my self-interest to do that. The labor groups spent over $1 million opposing me in my campaign. I spent over $37,000 in legal fees that were funded by these same labor groups exercising their free speech rights. Of all the people up here in particular, I have an issue with that. The other part of it deals with Chief Garcia. He just wasn't a good guy at the time. He just wasn't. And he literally did a bad service for our police officers and set our morale back quite a ways back, especially when we were short police officers. And yes, I did say he should be fired. And I have no problem with that. And I brought it up, they brought in an attorney, came in and talked to me, and I could not have been more clear. I told the attorney that was representing me, I told him, I said, this is what I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him everything of exactly what I said. Told him to check out my Facebook pages because I repeated it. And I said I had a First Amendment right, even though I was being challenged on that, and I did. And I'm glad he's gone, and I think our police department's a lot better now under Chief Yonner and now under Jerry Williams, Chief Williams. So I think we're going to be doing a lot better there with the police department. And that was a very controversial and very difficult time, especially when the labor groups were targeting me. But again, it comes down to self-interest versus, someone's free speech, and it is a conflict. I mean, from my end of it, I'm going to be supporting this. I know it's going to sound odd for some people, but I think free speech trumps my interest on this thing, and I think it also trumps the fact that we do live in a society where people have a right to complain. They have a right to say bad things about you. They don't have a right to get in my face too close, but they have a right to say those things I don't like, and I have a right to push back. I've done that with several groups that have come in here. I've pushed back on them because I believe that they have a right to say it, and I have a right to push back on them too. So I am going to be supporting this. My question goes back to this. If this is contrary to the charter, what happens next? Because I do think that they have a First Amendment right here.
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, so you could clearly pass the ordinance today with the amendment as proposed by Councilman Valenzuela of taking out but not initiating or circulating. And the ordinance would be valid as passed. There wouldn't be a problem with it. We would, however, continue to interpret the charter, the language that's up there, that shall not participate in political management affairs or campaigns, to include prohibiting city employees from initiating or circulating petitions.
So
that
if you
would be
want to
our
do it
legal
right, I would
interpretation.
strongly suggest we take this to the ballot. I mean, I would strongly suggest you do that. I mean, that way, I'm just presenting this to others up here on the, I mean, I'm definitely in the minority up here. I don't think it's unclear about that. But at the end of the day, if you want to do this right, if you want to memorialize it right, and regardless of how you move forward, you don't ever want to leave things hanging out there because it brings lack of clarity. And one of the things that we can do, that we should be doing, is always bringing forward clarity. Now you're going to have a situation where you have an interpretation, we have it on the record because it's clear. I mean, believe me, in plain reading of that, I see this the same direction as that. I would suggest you take it out and go back to the original language and go that way, and then clear this up, move it forward with an ordinance. You'll probably get unanimous support on something like that. Contrary to, again, some of our self-interests up here. But I think that would be the cleanest thing that you can do at this point, is my personal opinion.
Thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. Councilman Waring.
Okay, so I think Dan is briefing Brad, so go ahead, Dan.
Did you have additional comments, Councilman Waring?
I do.
Or a question?
It's a follow-up to Councilman DeCiccio to perhaps provide clarity, but Dan needs to brief Brad because I didn't get a chance to speak with Brad. I'm just seeing if I can do what I want to do.
So what do you want to do exactly, Councilman Waring?
All right.
I kind of sort of whispered into my ear here, and I'm not sure I completely understood
okay.
it.
So I would like to do, I mean, I guess we'll just talk about it, since it's not going to be a secret very long. So could I do an amendment to the existing motion? Dan seemed to indicate that I can. That would call for a meeting to have a vote on changing the city charter, which would address Councilman DeCiccio's concerns, would address my issues about donating, make sure that everybody who values free speech would have an opportunity to show just how much, I guess is a way to put it. And then I guess that election would be in March, because that would be the next scheduled election. So I'd like to, now can I do that? That was the question, and I'd like an answer.
So, as I understand it, there's an amendment on the floor. The amendment is Councilman Valenzuela's amendment. Until that motion to amend is voted on, then your proposal would be out of order, because that was the prior
Maybe
motion to
Dan
amend.
misunderstood. Could it be done as a substitute?
But same issue. Robert's Rules treats amendments and substitutes essentially the same way. Here's the key. There's a pending motion on the floor. Dan may not have appreciated that, but there was a pending motion on the floor. It's Councilman Valenzuela's motion. While that motion's on the floor, it has to be acted upon first before other substitutes or other motions to amend the amendment under our rules.
Let me phrase it then a different way. If that motion were withdrawn, we could start with a new motion that could do a lot more of what like Chief Berline wants, by addressing the charter issue as well. It would be done in a timely fashion. It would address my concerns about it impacting this specific election that's going on right now, even though it would, of course, happen just in time for Councilman DeCiccio's and mine re-election, but that's okay. Working against interest here, that's fine. But that could be done since people feel very strongly about free speech. We could do more free speech by going in and changing the charter. And we could do that as early as tomorrow at 4:05.
If
there's
Councilman Valenzuela
he'd have to
withdrew
withdraw.
his motion, then
Okay.
of course, lots of other things could be entertained.
So the ball's in his
But
court. He can-
his motion's on the table.
Mayor?
All right, so we have a pending motion. We have a second. Councilman Williams, please.
Is, what Councilman Waring is saying is, that's a separate issue, changing the charter.
Correct.
Correct, we could have a special meeting if it was notified and put forth as a charter amendment, but that has nothing to do with the motion that's on the floor. Am I correct?
Mayor, Councilwoman
Not
Williams,
really,
you're
because of your
correct.
comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion.
Can I address that?
We have a second. Councilman Waring?
So I thought Councilman DeCiccio had concerns, maybe rightfully so, that by stripping out your suggested clarifications that are on the screen, that we would be in conflict with the charter. So my motion would resolve that conflict.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, I misspoke if I suggested there was a conflict. What I tried to make clear is stripping out the language initiating or circulating, but not initiating or circulating, would simply take out a duplicate concept from the 12-217 code provision and would then default back to the charter. Our interpretation of the charter is that an employee cannot initiate or circulate nominating or recall petitions, interpreting the language that was up there a moment ago in the charter.
So it doesn't do anything.
So that's right.
Thank
Taking
you.
the language out is merely eliminating a duplicative, but we think a clarifying piece of language, but it's not necessarily required to have it there. We would still interpret the charter the same way.
But, Mayor, I guess I would say I'm okay with the initiating and circulating. The only way to address that is to change the charter, which I am now proposing. The only way I get to make my proposal is for Councilman Valenzuela to withdraw his. Is
Okay.
that a fair way to say it?
Yes.
Appreciate that. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any final comments or questions by members of this council? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's important that we move forward with First Amendment, and this will be a good opportunity to be a more inclusive employer. I think we should all try to think about the best interests of the entire city as we move forward after making these changes. That in general, if we all focus on city business when working with city employees, we will all be better off, but that we want to have people be well represented. Some of our city employees are the most informed voters in our elections, and sometimes it would be funny. I would meet I was running for office and be like at the grocery store talking to a city employee, and they would walk away like I had the plague because they were like, I can't be involved in city elections, I'm a city employee. So it will be nice to be able to have more inclusive elections where we can have great, well-informed conversations and hopefully end up with a stronger city.
Thank you very much. Any final questions, comments? Are we ready for a roll call? Chris, roll call.
DeCiccio. Noakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes, so the motion passes unanimously. We'll next move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is proposed 2015-16 budget year and report and adoption of 17-18 budget calendar. I have to leave for another meeting, so I'll hand the gavel over to the Vice Mayor.
I will be calling in as well, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, members of the council, this will be very quick. This item on the budget is just to give a status report on how we ended last year's budget, which is important because, as you remember from the past, any shortfall in revenue or over expenditure in the budget would impact this year and next year. So Jeff Barton, the Budget and Research Director, is here, and we're pleased to report that with the good work of our staff and your leadership, we have forecast our revenues accurately and spent less than our budget, and Jeff will explain that.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, members of the council. So this, as Ed mentioned, this will be a very brief but thorough presentation on how we ended last fiscal year from a budgetary standpoint. When we talk about the budget, obviously we're talking about both resources and expenditures. So when we're going to talk about the resource aspect of the equation first. So when we talk about resources, we're talking about our annual revenue, which includes our city and state sales tax. It also includes our state shared income taxes, VLT, primary property taxes, and user fees, and other, et cetera. We also have recoveries. So recoveries are when we liquidate a particular commitment from a prior fiscal year, it creates and recaptures funds back to the general fund. We also have net transfers. An example of a net transfer would be essentially an enterprise fund paying for its fair share of general fund support. A good example of that would be aviation and water paying for their fair share of IT infrastructure. And finally, we have our beginning fund balance. So in short, last fiscal year, from a variance standpoint, our forecasted resources versus the actual, there was a variance of a positive $8.6 million, or 0.7%. It's important to mention, though, that that includes one-time year-end accounting adjustments, and I'll discuss those a little bit more in detail on the next slide. When you look at the variance overall, it really falls into two categories. Revenue, a variance of about $6.2 million. However, of that, 5.4 is really reflected in year-end accounting adjustments. When you really isolate those and look at the revenue that my staff is responsible for forecasting, and in particular Tracy Reber and Aaron Williamson.
Unlocked.
who are in the audience, the variance was less than $800,000, or 0.1%. So again, extremely accurate when you're talking about $1 billion worth of revenue. The other variance was really a timing issue. As you know, the city is looking to replace its phone system. There was an expectation that the general fund would have to transfer money out to pay debt service for that project of about $2 million. With the delay in that project, those transfers did not happen. So we have one-time savings of $2 million from last fiscal year. The other thing I'd mention and emphasize is, again, based on some feedback and some of the scrutiny that we've faced in the past, we continue to engage and collaborate with the University of Arizona. That's proven to be extremely helpful. We are also participating in the state forecasting project. The work that we do with the University of Arizona, we actually have an econometric model. That model has proven to be extremely accurate. If you look at, again, $800,000 variance on $1 billion worth of revenue, I think we're hitting the mark. But I do want to talk to you briefly about the year-end accounting adjustments. So as I mentioned, year-end accounting adjustments were about $5.4 million of our resource variance. These things will happen every year. And they really are based on these three things. Number one is timing. Individual merchants may pay early or they may pay late. That creates a timing issue for us when it comes to our resources. We also have audit adjustments or audit assessments. Again, that could lead to refunds to merchants. A prime example of this is in fiscal year 14-15. We actually got a check for $3 million from the city of Scottsdale, who received a check from a merchant. Scottsdale, after taking some time, realized that it wasn't their revenue. They thought it belonged to us. So they sent us that check. That check was reflected in our revenue. But by the time we got to year end, it was determined that that revenue didn't belong to the city of Phoenix. So we refunded that money back to the merchant. So that created a $3 million year end adjustment. We also have, without getting too technical, we have other adjustments that happen throughout the year from a revenue standpoint. Typically, the accounts receivable. At the beginning of a year, our accounting staff, our finance staff, they recognize all of those collections as a receivable. At the year end, when we actually have actuals, the actuals and the receivable are paired together, and you have either a plus or a minus. So that creates other adjustments. What I want to emphasize to you, and I put up on the screen the last 3 fiscal years just to show you the volatility of those year-end accounting adjustments. In 13-14, we're talking about a positive $1.4 million. In 14-15, it was a minus $5.3 million. And last fiscal year, a positive $5.4 million. I put that on the screen to emphasize the volatility and our inability and our limits in terms of how we can forecast those things. We also anticipate that going forward, when the state takes over collections, that we may even see additional volatility because of timing and other receipts that come in. So now we move on to expenditures. I think it's important to emphasize, you've set the tone. Employees are listening. Employees are committed to saving money, providing service to residents faster and smarter. And again, I think that's evident. At the end of last fiscal year, we hit $112 million in innovation and efficiency savings since 2010. On top of that, last fiscal year, as part of the budget process, we actually looked at ourselves and we eliminated 119 vacant general fund positions. Those positions are estimated to save us about $11 million annually starting this fiscal year. Overall, the variance between forecasted expenditures and actual expenditures last fiscal year ending June 30 was less than $2 million, or 0.2% variance.
So that's important to say. What that says is we underspent the budget by $2 million, which is good. So in that case, a negative is good, and in terms of revenue, a positive is good. So on both ends, we had good results.
So when you look at those two items together, increased one-time resources and one-time savings, we have about $10.5 million over and above the anticipated ending balance for last fiscal year, which carries forward to this year's beginning balance. Again, I want to emphasize that that's one-time savings and one-time resources. Just like last year, our recommendation is that we kind of set those aside for now until we get further along in the budget process and really understand where we are for 17-18. And as we do look ahead, one thing I do want to emphasize again is finishing last year on such a strong note and actually hitting our revenue number for the year. What that means is that we're coming into this fiscal year without having to make any revenue adjustments, which we've done in the past couple of years. Also, through the first month of actual collections, and again, this is really another point that I emphasize, the state is getting later and later in terms of getting us their state shared revenue numbers. We still haven't gotten the second month yet, but through the first month and looking at our city sales tax, current year revenue is in line with our projected growth rate of 3.1%. So again, no need to adjust revenues at this point in time. On October 7th, my staff and all of the fiscal staff across the organization will begin our very detailed line item review, our zero-based budget process. That will take us, pretty much through January, but we are committed to come back to you in mid-December like we did last year with an early status. At that point in time, we won't have all of the pieces of the puzzle, but we'll at least have enough information to give you a range as to where we think 17-18 is trending. The final piece of business that we have today is we ask that you adopt the 2017-18 budget calendar. This calendar is consistent with previous calendars. What it ensures is that we are in compliance with all state statutes and city charter provisions to ensure that we adopt the budget in accordance with all of those provisions. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilwoman Williams?
I thank you for the presentation. You've given us some good news. Your accuracy, I think, is phenomenal. I'm very proud of your staff and how you've been able to do the budget the last few years and to listen to the different members on the council and really follow some of the suggestions we made that makes it much more easier to read. The recommendation for the calendar looks almost identical to last year's. It probably is. I would move approval of it.
Second.
And we have one card from the public. Would it be okay if we take that card before we vote? Diane Barker, in favor.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairwoman Gallegos and City Council Diane Barker. I'm in District 7, and I decided to come down here. I read the City Council packet, and I was happy to hear that we're looking at keeping a budget. I think that you mentioned there's $10 million there, but it's a one-time surplus. I'm a person that I'm interested in the big picture. I'm interested in international finance. I don't hold myself out to be an expert, but I read. And what I'm suggesting to you, which you probably already know, but really we need to be fiscally constrained. We need to be conservative about what we're doing. We need to be looking here several years into the future. This date today is kind of like a conspiratorial date, September 27th, 2016, but it's noted that we go through cyclical markets, and we're supposed to, on this date or at the end of the month, be hitting a bust, which would mean going into deflation. If you look at international, the Deutsche Bank is having some big problems and they don't keep enough deposits. We did a bailout, and AIG was involved with that to help, and they indirectly got some money too, but there's not that money there. At the end of the month, there's this new type of a note that the Chinese are putting out, which is apparently from the private markets, and it may affect the dollar. The dollar may end up being devalued. Okay, so all of this doesn't really sound great, but we need to be aware of it. We need to know that, and what you're having to do too is you're going to have to pay for the pensions and so forth. So let's get the big picture and hang tight for the ride. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barker. The one minor change that did come up last budget process in terms of scheduling was that we did hear from the senior citizen community. They would love to have a budget hearing, community budget hearing during the day. And at the Shen subcommittee, we're looking at the AARP age-friendly communities designation, and that was also one of their points they reiterated. Very minor. We've won many, many awards and look forward to winning more. So with that, we have a motion on the table. If everyone is ready, we'll ask the clerk to...
Vice Mayor, we will ensure that we plan for a daytime hearing with the seniors this year. As part of that, the action isn't that specific, but just be assured that we heard that, and we'll make sure we build that in. And you can either do a roll call or you can just do a voice vote on
I'm sorry, a voice vote sounds appropriate. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.